Hello, Social Blueprint community. Today we have brought you Sarah Bendetski and to talk to her about the many community things that she's involved in since immigrating to Australia at the age of 22. And I think you'll find this very interesting, the thought processes behind her desire to give back. So welcome, Sarah.
Hello, Jim. So tell us, please, a bit about your upbringing.
Well, I'm from Moscow, and I was born in 1986, which was a very interesting time when the Soviet Union was already starting to collapse and it was a bit more free, and the first Jewish communities and shuls were reopening, and Chabad was quite active. And I was growing up seeing that you actually can be Jewish, as opposed to my brother, whose nose was broken just for the Jewish last name, 10 years before. And I was always interested, about my Jewish heritage. I heard stories. My great-grandparents ran an underground shul, for example. And the neighbors were always calling on KGB every time they had a secret minyan over there. So I grew up on the stories that, all the, as they call Mesiras Nefesh, and all the things you do in life to, bring Judaism a bit closer to those who unfortunately lost the contact with it. So those were all the little things that were always there, and celebrating Jewish holidays during those times when we would get humanitarian packages from Israel with the matzah, or, the very first signs of Jewishness were back in the Jewish books, that was always very exciting. And when I was around 15, my father said, well, we don't have too many Jewish schools here, and I was attending one of the only Hebrew day schools, but the quality of the education, even though they did their best, was still not, the options overseas were bigger at that stage. And my brother was already studying overseas in the States, and my father said, well, how about you go and study over there? And the chief rabbi of Moscow, Rabbi Lazar, had relatives in Pittsburgh, and he made a few phone calls, and they basically accepted me without any exams. And that was it. I was on the plane not realizing what it's like to live overseas without your parents, who never allowed me to go further than a few blocks from my home on my own. And here I was going all the way there. That was quite ambitious. A day later, I called home and said, well, I don't like it. Can I go back? And my dad said, no. You have to prove yourself. You have to show yourself that you can do it. Let's talk in a year. Well, we're still talking. Yeah. And that was my, my first immigration.
Goodness. So I believe you lived in the United States. How old were you when you did that move? Did you say 15, 16?
16, yes.
So did you live alone, or?
I lived with an American family. And every night I would go to my brother's place, and he just got married and lived in a small apartment. And obviously he loved having me there and helping me with all my homework, 5-6 hours every night, translating line by line with his wife. That's what you do the first year as you get married, right?
What a good brother.
And sister-in-law.
And sister-in-law, yes.
My true family overseas.
Lovely. And what brought you to Australia?
Well, my husband, of course, when you meet someone, you say, I'll go with you to the end of the earth, to the moon and back. Well, I actually meant that. We met in New York, and we were introduced at a Shabbat dinner. Actually, that was the dinner with the Chaim and Esther Sirbransky family that were originally from Melbourne. And he told me, look, last week we had this wonderful Russian-speaking girl. Maybe you should meet her. And I said, okay, let's meet her. And 4 dates later, we decided that was meant to be. I was young. I didn't think much. I remember when I called my dad and told him, Papa, I'm getting married. I met this wonderful guy. And my father was at a Russian marketplace. And I hear all this, people talking and go, yeah, I want that fish and this fish. What? You're getting married? You're only 19. Yeah, the rest is history.
Goodness. Imagine that phone call. So that is just amazing. Now, I've heard that you've written a couple of Russian books.
That's right.
What are those books about?
Well, it's a collection, several collections of short stories, humorous and lyrical. A lot of the stories about migration and finding home, a lot of Jewish stories similar to modern-day Shalom Aleichem type of settings. and quite a bit of comedy in making fun of our life during COVID lockdowns and finding some positive things about stories. And I also wrote a children's book for Jewish Care several years ago that was in English about the tzedakah and importance of giving back. So yeah, it's one of my big passions.
Can I just ask you, because I'm unaware, and maybe other people are too, when you said you wrote the first book, as in Shalom Aleichem, does it mean it's in Yiddish?
No, I mean, it is a similar type of setting when you were talking about this small person, as they say, who has lots of tzaras in life, but also has a big strength, or be it their connection to Yiddishkeit, or love for their family, or some huge dream that they believe in the middle of their shtetl, and they will accomplish this dream because they have this pintele Yid inside them, as Shalom Aleichem would put it. So that's of Zinger or other Yiddish writers I'm still following. That's something I really believe in.
Your volunteer work over many years here has been in the areas of disability support, aged care, Jewish outreach, and food. What has driven you to give back? And what were some of your experiences as a child that you think has helped drive you?
Well, when I think about it, it comes to the understanding that we all have our challenges in life. And there is a very good Jewish story, or a mashal as they call it. If every single person in the world could pick the challenges that other people have and they would be all brought in a package, everyone would go and pick their package back. Because we have no idea what other people are going through. And when life gives you an opportunity to make a difference, to help a bit with tikkun olam, to create a positive change in someone's life, I think that's a test to us. We can all be just focusing on our own lives, or we can become parts of each other's lives. And you never know, maybe tomorrow you'll need help, and that person will be there for you. So it's about this cycle of giving. When I was 16 years old and I just moved to the States, my school principal, Mrs. Darren, said that you shouldn't think about yourself that you're in such a tough situation. Even though your English is not perfect yet, but you can still tutor a 5-year-old student who also moved recently from former USSR. And I couldn't understand what she was talking about because my English was far from perfect. But she said, look, you can tutor her about basic reading, you can do some basic homework with her, and that's going to create a positive meaning for you and for her. And we became best friends, and that helped me believe in myself. She also put me in touch with a group of volunteer girls who were friendly visitors at a local Jewish aged care, and they made me in charge of the Russian-speaking seniors. So I developed some beautiful friendships over the years and wrote stories about these people as well later on in life. When I was in seminary in Montreal several years later, we also had this program similar to what UJIT does in Melbourne.
Yes.
And I was attending a special needs school where we were tutoring Jewish kids with profound disabilities, actually, and doing basic, Jewish 101 learning programs. That was an eye-opener. I've never seen disability so close.
Yes.
And that moved my heart. And thankfully, we were also working together in a collaboration with Access Inc. here and Jewish Care and other organizations running programs together out of Super Bistro, doing some training for people with a disability in the barista course space and commercial cooking. That's always a big part of it. And similarly, in my work with the Ukrainian refugees, we've been also trying to help, not just, of course, everyone, but we've been also helping refugees with disabilities because they found themselves in a very tough situation.
Yes.
When someone moves here from a war-torn country and can at least work physically, they'll be all right. But what do you do if you have a disability and NDIS doesn't recognize it because you're not a citizen, you don't have a permanent residence? Those are areas that are complex, but also extremely important to attend to. Yeah, and when it comes to Jewish outreach, well, that's basic. For me, that's my favorite because, that's something I grew up with. This is one of the core values for Chabad community, and I'm a part of this community. Yes. And every Friday, I remember as I was a student in Crown Heights in New York, I would go out and give out Shabbat candles, and I would buy them and pack them as I was doing some laundry in the laundromat. And I remember I would call my dad and tell him, Papa, every Friday I go and give out these Shabbat candles to hundreds of women. And he loved it. And he said, wonderful, where have you found this sponsor who pays for all the candles? And I said, don't you know? It's you. I mean, I have this beautiful conversation with my dad. And he said, oh, really? Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity. He was very good about it.
That is beautiful.
So they always supported me, my parents.
That's lovely. You're very fortunate too.
Yeah, and all those experiences led me to enjoying this and to building more
Yes.
on it, building more about it in Australia. So that's where super, I guess, is coming from.
So we're going to get to super in a minute. With the recent war in Ukraine, you've helped many families. Can you tell us about the work, what's been involved in it, and what is still needed?
Yes, of course. So the big thing for us was not to just, not to pretend that we have nothing to do with it, because it's the easiest thing. We're far away in Australia. We don't live in those regions anymore. We have a lot of work as is with families in need. But I couldn't find peace because I know a lot of people who were in Ukraine at that stage, and we had some connections to help them. So we knew some immigration agents who were happy to help with tourist visa applications. So we found a group of volunteer translators who were helping people with applications. Then we started fundraising because that's a lot of money, even $150 or $60 that each application costs. It's a lot of money for people in Ukraine. Some of them make $300, $500 a month. So we were looking for money to cover those. Tickets, that's a massive expense. Once they had their visas, and the visas were processed extremely quickly at this stage. 2 days, 3 days, usually takes months. No questions were asked. So at a certain stage, Australia became very understanding. Then we were looking for volunteers to greet people at the airport, to host them. And that was before the humanitarian program was announced. That was before organizations such as Amos were established, or started to work with Ukrainians. Maybe they were established, but they were not focusing on this at that stage. So housing was an issue. Clothing. We had some families coming with nothing, with $10 in their pockets, with one little plastic bag of belongings if they were running away. So they needed everything. So we were not equipped to provide it all. So we quickly started thinking, who can we work with to make it happen? So we were talking to other organizations. We were talking to private donors. We were talking to people on Facebook and other social media just to bring whatever they could. So our cafe hub was used as the drop-in center. And social media helped a lot. You could establish very quick connections and solutions on a spot. So that's what we've been doing. And that was a very interesting period. We didn't sleep much, but lots of people were saved as a result. And talking of current needs, it's not as severe as it used to be, and the humanitarian program has stopped on the government level. But those who are here, they still need a lot of support. So at this stage, I think it's mostly permanent employment, because that's something that can help people not to rely on other organizations' help. Studying, maybe some referrals to universities for, students.
Are they allowed to work here?
Yeah.
If they've come as refugees,
Absolutely.
They're already allowed?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear.
Yes.
And is there a drop-in centre where people can drop things off if they have things available?
Most of them closed at this stage because the government started to provide. So they were providing bedding and furniture and basic things for the people. So everything they could get, and also vouchers. So we are helping quite a few families through our food security program. So for the first year, we believe it's still every dollar counts, especially with the current cost of living. And in a year's time, we'll assess how people are doing. So our idea is to help people help themselves. But due to the extreme nature of the move, it's not immigration. It's a very different experience. And a lot of people need psychological help and trauma help and all this. So it will take quite some time for them to settle. Absolutely.
Incredible. Well done to you.
Thank you.
Amazing. So we want to explain to people about Super Kitchen.
Yes.
Located Hawthorne Road.
208 Balaclava Road, on the corner of Hawthorne Road, across the road from Caulfield Park.
A great location.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us how it's going at Super Kitchen?
Yes. So Super Kitchen is a charity, and the main focus of Super Kitchen is food security services. So mostly grocery hampers that we put together. We pack them actually at Blake Street Show fortnightly, and our wonderful volunteers distribute them to over 30 suburbs in Melbourne. That's one aspect of Super. In order to be more self-sufficient, we started Super Bistro, which is a social enterprise cafe where all profits are used to run our services in food security space. So every time you come to Super Bistro for amazing schnitzels, voted best in town according to me, and other Eastern European cuisine, you're basically donating to a very good cause.
Yes.
We also employ lots of people from various backgrounds who need meaningful employment. We actually employ several Ukrainian refugees and amazing people in the community who feel that that's the place to work because they associate themselves with our values, which is wonderful and a big source of pride to us. And this business is in a way similar to All Things Equal Cafe,
Yes.
which is also a social enterprise, and we're hoping to work together to continue educating the community and bringing awareness about social enterprises and for-purpose businesses that help
Lovely.
run community services.
Social impact.
Correct. When we talk about, in general, what drives people to take action in life, it all comes to the fact that they need to feel that they belong in the community, that they have an experience to share, that they need to find their place, to call it their new home. That's been my experience in every country I lived in. And when I moved to Australia, I wasn't happy to begin with. I didn't want to come here because it was my third move already, from Moscow to the States, where I studied for some time. Then I lived in Canada, then I lived in the States again. Lots of studying. I mean, Jewish kids, they have to study everything, according to my parents. And then I moved here because my husband's family was living here for many years already. And I've never been to Australia. It felt like another planet. And in fact, when I was in school, I remember we were studying one text about Australia, and I was the only one to complain. Why do we have to study anything about this country where we'll never, ever go? And probably at that stage, someone heard me above and said, well, she's going. So for me, it was about finding meaning, why I'm here. And as a religious person, I'm always looking for the divine providence and reasons. I can't just enjoy myself. So it all started with Shabbat dinners. We were inviting Russian-speaking Jewish friends of my husband. And at a certain stage, we realized there was not enough space in the apartment. So then I thought, what else can we do for the community? You know, I was constantly looking, who can we help? What can we do? So I will understand, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still questioning, why am I here? Well, now there are other reasons, you know, but it's always what's next.
What a wonderful attitude. If others could think outside of their own lives, to think how they could help others every day, that would be a really beautiful place to live.
Well, the truth is, when we're thinking about us, it's of course obviously it's important to put the mask on yourself first, as they say when we travel. But it's always about finding meaning behind it. And when you're helping someone else, you're meeting amazing, like-minded people.
Yes.
And you start to understand, how can we do, something together? What's the collaboration? Who is my new friend? And your life is enriched, and it's a very different life. It's not just a basic survival.
That's wonderful. Wow. Well, you have done a lot in the short time you've been here.
Thank you.
Really impressive. So we like to finish up our interviews by asking, what does being Jewish mean to you?
To me, being Jewish is to care. And everyone has their own definition of how much care, what do you mean by care? It's to care, to be a good person, to look around, not to think only about your own needs, and to look up and ask God to help you, and then you'll be successful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Sarah Bendetski, thank you very much for joining us here at the Social Blueprint. I'm sure everyone listening will be amazed at what one pocket rocket can do in a short amount of time. So thank you
so
very
much.
much. We really appreciate it. And for everyone who has watched this and enjoyed this interview, please go to socialblueprint.org.au and share it with your friends. Thank you.